You're listening to the Mindful Mama Podcast, episode 75. Today we're talking about conscious communication. Welcome to the Mindful Mama Podcast. Here it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you are thriving, when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-FIELDS, Mindfulness Mama Mentor. I coach overstressed moms on how to cultivate self-awareness in their daily lives and to take family and life to a new level of awakening. I've been practicing yoga and mindfulness for over 20 years, and I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I'm the mom of two girls, ages 7 and 10. So thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you're here. It's the middle of summer here if you are listening to this live in hot, sticky July, or maybe you're listening to it in the future. But either way, I welcome you. I'm so glad you're here. And this episode is an interview, and I'm going to be talking with a really inspiring, great teacher and friend of mine, Lori Petro. Lori Petro. And I'll tell you more about her, but she's a parent educator and she's a child advocate, and she is one of the people who really helped me understand what was wrong with the parenting I was doing when my daughter was little. It really made me think, really made me open my eyes, and I think you'll find that this conversation really opens your eyes to how even some of the things that we say to our kids that just seem like some of the normal things we say can be harming. It's really amazing, and Lori is a master at helping us communicate more consciously. And I can't wait for you to listen to this episode. Right now, things have been pretty quiet over at HunterClarkeFields.com. I have been working on my book. I'm working on a book proposal. It's a lot of work going on there. But as you can tell, maybe I've been doing more with the podcast. I've been really enjoying connecting with you this way. And I'm really enjoying the podcast, so I've been kind of making it a little more weekly. Is this something you like? Let me know. If this is something that you like, you can let me know by emailing me at hunter@hunterclarkefields.com. And I want to thank Dee Mama of Two for the 5-star review on iTunes. Thank you so much. I'm going to assume your name is Dee. Thank you so much, Dee. She wrote, "I'm never disappointed with the content of this podcast. So easy to listen to and apply. Transparency is so alive here. Awesome job, Hunter." Thank you so much, Dee. I really, really appreciate that. And I want to let you know, if you want to leave a review, I know what happens is that you listen and you're like, oh, it's good, I'll leave Hunter a review, and then life gets in the way and you sit down on your computer and it's not what you remember hours later. So actually, I found out that you can leave a review right on your phone. So say you have an iPhone, you open up your podcast app in your iPhone, and you click on that search button and you just search for the Mindful Mama Podcast. So if you search for the Mindful Mama Podcast, and what you can do is you can click on the podcasts, and then when you click on podcasts, you can go to reviews, click on reviews, and it says write a review. So you can write a review right there on your phone. So if you've been wanting to leave a review and it would be awesome if you do, I'd be ever so grateful, because it just helps get the message out to more people. It has to do with the iTunes algorithm. It really helps a lot. So if you want to leave a review, I would be so appreciative, and I may read it on the air. I would be thrilled to get some more reviews. So on to this episode. I'm so happy to have on today Lori Petro, my friend, and she is a parent educator and child advocate at teachthroughlove.com. Lori's on a mission to transform the way parents communicate with their children. And I have to give you a personal intro to Lori, because when I was struggling and I was miserable, I found these amazing YouTube videos, and they completely changed the way I thought about parenting. I was like, what? I mean, I remember sending one of Lori's videos to a friend of mine and saying, will you watch this and tell me what you think about this? Because it completely changed my world. worldview so much. So thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast today, Lori, and thank you for the work you do. You're such an inspiration to me, always.
Oh, you're too sweet, too sweet. I still remember when you came and we did a video interview when you were starting your online programs and way back when. And so I'm so grateful for you as well and the calmness that you bring to us as moms, because that's really needed. So thank you for having me on.
Oh my gosh, it's a hard-earned calmness.
Right? Totally.
So you work, like I said, with communication, and you want to transform the way parents communicate with their children. So why is this work so important to you?
Mostly because of my experience as a kid. I didn't have very good communication skills. I grew up in a home where there was a lot of yelling, demanding, control, and my parents weren't trying to be, they weren't trying to make our relationship hard. They weren't trying to make me unhappy, right? And I wasn't trying to make their lives miserable, but it turned out to really feel that way for everybody. And so I grew up feeling really disconnected and disrespected, and they felt really disrespected. And it ruined kind of our relationship. And my ability to have healthy relationships didn't ruin like that, but it didn't give me a good foundation. And so my personal journey of healing really led me to realize that, okay, it's the way that we speak to each other, and not just with words, but nonverbal communication, body language, like the silent stare and the eye that you get. And, you hear people talk about all their parents had to do was look at them, and they knew. And I get that that's was a useful tool in the past, but I feel like we've moved beyond that, and now we know better. And really what it does, the way that we interact shapes the way our children's brains develop. So there couldn't be anything more important than development and relationship. Yeah. For me, I feel like those are two key factors that all parents, they want healthy development. They want strong relationships with their kids. So that's why I do it. It's really just about helping parents understand their kids and communicate limits and boundaries without making kids feel like they are bad, because that's what kids feel. They're like, oh my gosh, or that they hate them. Oh my gosh, you hate me. And we're not saying I hate you, but their little brains perceive, and even when they're 14, their brains are little and they're immature and their perspectives are limited, and they perceive that we don't like them, or that, they're always disappointing us. They get these messages that we don't consciously mean to send, but it gets all messed up in the language and our just traditional ways of interacting with each other.
So you're saying that your parents, it's not like they were excessively abusive or unskillful or anything like that. They were just kind of the average, authoritarian parents of your childhood?
Well, yes. I mean, there's a lot of culturally it was influenced by our culture for sure. And I think every culture has their different ways of communicating. So it was really loud and abusive, but I think that was just defined very much by our culture. Whereas some other, people may be very quiet and reserved in their communication, and that's their family pattern. So if I look back, I'm not going to say it wasn't abusive, because it was, but it was also very common. It's sort of, I feel like, hidden behind, because I wasn't going to school with bruises. I wasn't getting beaten. But it wasn't here and there. It was verbal attacks and calling me lazy and disrespectful and all, calling me names. And again, it was done out of anger. My parents I know that they didn't mean to be abusive. And they might even disagree with calling it that. But I'm not sugarcoating it anymore, because it's not fair to kids, and it's not fair to parents, because they're unnecessarily creating disconnection and building walls that they don't even know are there. because their children are putting up walls saying, I don't want to be treated like this. And my behavior is my way of telling you. My slamming the door is my communication. But parents just see more disrespect. So I'm trying to translate everything. So I'm going to translate for the parents what the kids are actually saying with the slamming doors. And then I want to help them be able to translate their limits and boundaries into words that actually bring their kids closer. And kids are like, okay, I really do want to do this for you because you respect me and you're helping me and you're standing by me and you're supporting me, instead of feeling judged and blamed and shamed, which again is unconscious. It's the little things. It's like, how many times do I have to tell you? Well, when a kid hears that, even once a day, every day, even if they hear that, a few times, over time it builds up, and it creates kids who are stressed out. And then they're afraid to make mistakes, when making mistakes is just a natural part of childhood. And the way that, slamming doors is sometimes just a natural reaction. So if we don't take that personally as parents, we're able to connect with our kids. We're able to say, okay, this isn't okay. I don't like when doors are slammed, but I know that you're trying to tell me something and I want to listen. Well, guess what? That kid doesn't need to slam the door anymore, because now you're saying, I'm here and I'm open. This is not okay. This is not okay. I'm setting the limit. I want you to know it. I mean, I think sometimes parents want to, well, they need to feel the consequences. It's like, well, I want them to feel their feelings and be able to manage them, because emotional development, emotional intelligence, that is such a huge predictor of mental, physical, and emotional and social health. So
success, all that stuff. Oh my God, Lori, I could just go off in so many different directions on this with you, because it's so fascinating to me. Because I think like you, I come from a place like where there was a lot of like unskillful language, and it's funny because I've talked to my dad about that, and we see sort of these patterns over time, where when he was a kid, he was really shamed for having dyslexia, but he was also like beaten with a belt, under on his legs, and that was just normal. That was just normal parenting then. That wasn't considered anything abusive. And I was yelled at and spanked, and I remember like being chased down the hall and petrified fear, right? Totally petrified fear. And like, for me, my dad was saying, well, yeah, he said, well, you're really not yelling at your kids or as much as you can, right? And really practicing to not do that. So you're sort of taking it up a notch. And I remember feeling like, well, it's not enough to just not yell. I really like what you're talking about this idea of connection. But for those who are still like have a big question mark over their head, for the listener who's listening who has a big question mark over their head, and they say, I don't know, like my parents like spanked me or yelled at me and I'm fine, like what's the big deal? Like, what do you say to that?
We all grow up, right? We grow up, and in spite of our childhoods, because of them, which is it? Here's the thing. I want to know how you were then. Just like you said, you were petrified running down the hall. That's who I'm concerned about. Now, we're adults. We learn how to, we're relearning, a lot of us now, how to take care of ourselves. And when we look at our own reactions to our kids, why do we get so upset when the shoes aren't put on in time? Why do we feel like we need to scream and yell? We're not okay. Because if we're in patterns where we're engaging in negative communication with our kids, that's constantly just creating power struggles, then how are we so okay? Right? And this isn't about blaming anyone. Like you're talking about your parents, like it's getting less with each generation. The intensity of the pain and sadness with which we actually have been communicating for, all of our history as we know it, for the most part. So much of it is being healed, though, because through this awareness, through just taking care of ourselves. So I want to help parents feel like they're supported too. I don't want parents to feel like, oh, everything I say, is now going to, ruin my child. No, it's not that. I just want to help them feel like they are being heard. Because I think most of the time parents are yelling because they feel like they're not being heard and no one's listening to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that feeling really does come from running down the hall and being petrified, because it just hardwires our brains. So here's the thing. Our interactions with our primary caregivers in those early years shape the structure, the size, and the connectivity of our brains. So when we are constantly using things like fear or blame or shame or judgment, what we're doing is we're stimulating the fight or flight response. So it makes us more reactive. We hardwire patterns that allow us to be quick in danger, responsive in danger. But communicating with our kids, that's not dangerous situations. But often we are acting and reacting as if there's a fire and we're all like running for our lives, because that's what got hardwired for a lot of us. So when we respond to our kids with compassion, with empathy, with patience, that doesn't mean with no rules. It says, I'm not going to let you do this. You can't go outside. You can't have that candy. I'm not going to let you. And then we put that physical boundary in when we need. But when we use the empathy without getting defensive, we stimulate the higher, more evolved parts of our brains that are developing in our children and very immature, right? The thinking part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. That's the part where self-regulation, impulse control, thoughtfulness, empathy, that's where those things are housed. So those are the parts of the brain that we need to stimulate so that we grow them, because the brain is a use it or lose it kind of organ. We have to stimulate the areas that we want to grow.
Yeah. I love your emphasis on empathy, and I'm all on board with you. And I'm trying to imagine what about the parent? Like, I recently read an article that was talking about, what are sort of the things for good parenting. And one, during the toddler years, they said, there should be a little fear mixed in with that. There should be a little fear mixed in with that love, right? Like, your child should fear you a little bit. And I just had a big problem with this. But I know some people think that it's important to have a little bit of fear for your child to be able to listen to you. So how do we get our children to listen to us without that fear? And what is that fear doing anyway?
Well, first, I think it's kind of scary just being a toddler anyway. Like, you can barely talk. You can't really get anybody to understand what you mean. You're really impulsive. Emotions feel like they're like smacking you in the face and rolling you. You're under the water in the ocean and the waves going. I mean, so there's the fear. Like, if we're worried that they need fear, I think that we've got it covered. No. But it comes from our own fear, doesn't it? Like the fear that no one's going to listen to us, or that they're going to grow up and people are judging us, and our parents are looking at us, and our friends and our peers, and like everybody's judging us, and the teachers and the lady at the mall that's staring us down. But did you see that most beautiful photo from that actor from some show called Jane the Virgin? And it was him and his toddler and his dad, and his wife took the picture, and the little girl was on the floor, like face down in the middle of Costco. And his dad and him are just standing on either end. They're like bookmarking her, looking down, and it's the sweetest photo. And he posted it on the internet, and it went viral because he talked about just the most important thing that his dad did for him was just letting him feel his feelings.
Oh my God.
And he recognized how much that contributed to who he is now as a grown man. And so the picture is just so beautiful. There's like 2 or 3 year olds on the floor, literally face down. People are like, just imagining the dirt on the floor. That would stop us, right? We'd be like, get up off the floor. We wouldn't want to let them feel, because we'd be worried about the dirt, or we'd be worried about who was watching us.
Yeah, what people are thinking. That literally gives me goosebumps, that story, Lori, because it's so rare. It's so unusual.
Yes, it was so beautiful. It was really beautiful. And it reminded me, my friend posted it on my timeline, because the exact same thing happened to me I was walking, I lived in Los Angeles at the time, my daughter was about 3, and something happened and she got upset, and we were in the middle of the street walking to the farmer's market. She just decided to lay down on the floor and have a screaming, melting, fall down cry. And we were doing the exact same thing that these guys were doing in the photo. And I remember this one family stopping to watch. And then they talked with us after, because she said, I was just so fascinated that she was lying on the ground and you were just kind of standing there compassionately watching, but not really, doing or saying anything. And we had this long conversation after and became friends, So it was just those moments, we need to celebrate those moments. So I was so happy that photo went viral, because I feel like it's not rare, but it's not celebrated enough.
Well, it's like you think about every single problem in our society, and almost everything comes back to people not knowing how to take care of their big feelings, right? And not like having it be rejected, like you're not supposed to have those feelings, or you're wrong, or you're bad, or whatever for having those feelings. And almost every single problem in our society goes back to that, like people just unable to accept their own difficult feelings, and it all comes back to our childhood. And I think this, Lori and I here are talking a lot about how we were raised as parents, as children, because this really creates this sort of pattern for how we are then parenting our kids. It's not blaming our parents, but it's just like looking at and understanding and creating that awareness. But yeah, it all goes back to not being able to feel your big feelings. Absolutely.
Definitely. And most of us, we might not even know that we're having feelings, because we've never actually named them or identified them, or connected the feeling, the emotional state of our body with the physical sensations that we're having. That's so important, that whole mind-body connection, which is why what you do puts us in touch with that mind, so that we can be still enough to recognize ourselves and our emotional state before we do explode. And here's the thing, we explode, right? I yell, I am no different than anybody else, but I'm aware, I don't stand up for my yelling and do it in this self-righteous way. Like, well, they deserved it, or she needed, and it called for that, or I go back and I say, you know what, that probably was scary for you. And I'm going to do this the next time I'm feeling really dysregulated or angry. I'm going to walk away and get some water and then come back and talk, because I shouldn't be talking, unless I'm yelling because there actually is danger. That's when yelling is appropriate. Yelling and then running to help the child out of the street when they're, running into it. Yeah. But not in our everyday interaction. I feel like that's where we just need to pull it back and but that self-care is what helps us not be so reactive.
Oh yeah, yeah. That whole being less reactive piece is huge. I mean, that's what we work on in the mindful parenting. Is this whole first half is like let's figure out, let's use these mindfulness techniques, establish a practice so that you can actually make yourself less reactive. Right? It's the one thing that's sort of proven to help us be less reactive is to sit still and breathe and notice our breathing. It's kind of amazing. So what are some of so we don't want to use fear, blame, and judgment, right? Because these cause the stress response. So then what if you have a toddler then? And what do we do to have that toddler listen to us?
Oh, right. That you did ask that. How do we get our kids to listen, right? So I think we have to shift out of this idea that they're supposed to listen to us. So if we need them to put their shoes on because we have to get out the door at 10:30, well, then let's make sure that we have a plan. And that plan might be picking up the screaming toddler and putting them in the car seat without their shoes, and being okay with that, like not feeling like we have to convince our kids that they have to listen to us. Listening to us usually just implies obedience, and I want more for us. I think we want more for our kids. We want to be influential, so we can have obedience, and you can control, especially toddlers, pretty easily. Some of them, not all, but some, with fear, with takeaways, with all of that. But then are we actually stimulating the right part of the brain to develop and grow? Right? We're not, because all of that stimulates the fear centers. So we have to let go of this idea that kids are going to agree with us and agree with our limits, and then take care of ourselves.
And then make our own, we're the ones responsible for taking care of our own needs and our own limits, right? Is kind of what you're saying.
And be okay with them getting upset, because they will. Like if you're looking for a child who's going to be like, okay, yes, mommy, I'm not going to have any more candy today. Okay, yes, daddy, I'm not going to scream anymore. I feel completely at ease with the fact that I'm not allowed to go out and play because it's too dark. Or it's time to separate because we have to, go to sleep now. I need at least 10 hours. They're not going there. They're not logical. They're emotional. They're irrational. So that's the toddler, preschooler. Even when they start to develop some of that capacity to be more emotionally flexible, that part of the brain takes the entire span of childhood to develop, like into age, into early 20s. And that's just current neuroscience. We know that the brain continues to change. So even though we may be really reactive at 30 and 40, we can change too. So we can develop the capacity to be less reactive with our kids. And then suddenly we see toddlers who, quote unquote, aren't listening, and we're able to shift into a proactive state of taking care of ourselves, meeting our needs, and still setting boundaries, right? But here's the thing. We have to stop being afraid that if we don't, apply punishment or consequences, that our kids are going to like be these unruly, tribal, crazy people with no...
Well, the truth is, right, the punishment... The punishment doesn't work, though. I mean, like, the thing that because I've done both. I thought I was all on board with authoritarian parenting in the beginning, and I was like, my child will blah, blah, blah. And then I discovered you, and I discovered some other things.
Or you discovered your children were like, well, maybe not, Mom.
Exactly. Because the thing is, like, it doesn't really work that well. Like, we have this idea that it's like, this is working so well, but, like, maybe if you have your kids on this incredibly fearful regime, they're absolutely obedient. But
until what age? Till they're teenagers.
I know, exactly. Until your power runs out. Like, if we use power, like it really backfires. Like, when I order my kids around, that's exactly when they are the most resistant to me. You know what I mean? Like, well, it doesn't work that well.
And that's you just hit on something really, really important. When we order and boss them around, what are they then learning to go out and do to get their needs met?
Yeah.
Order and boss everybody around. And so it becomes the smaller child or their little sibling. Now, obviously, some sibling conflict is normal and natural and going to, need to unfold in a way that helps kids live together. But it shouldn't be all the time. And kids then learn to rely on others to meet their needs. So then it becomes all about, well, you're making me mad and you're making me sad. And if you wouldn't do this, then I wouldn't be this way. And who's taking accountability? So I want to teach my kid to be responsible for her actions and to know that what other people do, she may have a feeling, a reaction to it. She may see it and it may stir something in her, these emotions. But then from that point on, she has the ability to direct that story. Now she can either be like, oh, these emotions are overtaking me and I have no control, and let them overwhelm her. And when we're young, it does, because we don't have a lot of control, and that's where the connection piece comes in. So parents come to that toddler who's upset or that 7-year-old, and instead of trying to use logic to be like, well, it's just this way and then don't you see that, and we try to like convince them, we just have to honor their immaturity, honor where they are. That must feel really tough. Because after you honor that, then you can get to, what do you think could have been different? What would you have liked to happen? What do you think you were really trying to say when you hit your friend on the arm? Then they are able to, once they're calm and feeling connected to somebody else, because our emotional development happens through our interactions and with our primary caregivers, right? Our parents, our grandparents, family members, whoever are those immediate people in a child's life. That's what's shaping how they feel about their world and how they respond and how they're making memories out of every interaction. Well, I kind of went on a tangent there.
No, I love your tangents. I love your tangents because there's so much wisdom in there. But I mean, I think that kind of what you're pointing to is this idea of I don't know, like self-love and self-acceptance in some way. Like, I feel like in a lot of the women I work with, one of the biggest challenges that we have, it all comes down to like that we don't, there's this feeling of unworthiness, like we can't love and accept ourselves. And I feel like that in turn goes back to our childhood, right? Like, we're always taught from childhood that we are not good enough because we're always, someone's always pointing out what we're doing wrong or how to do it better or things like that. And what you're saying, like, instead is, honor, acknowledge where they are, right? Like, oh, you were really upset. Like, even if your child's having a crappy day and hits their friend, you are really upset. Like your language, your communication with your body and your words says that you still love and accept them for who they are. Your love isn't conditional. You still love and accept them for who they are. But there's still a boundary there of like, what, this wasn't okay. What can we do instead? Is that kind of what you're pointing to?
Definitely. And believe me, it doesn't have to be said with this like we're like praising our children for I'm not saying that we have to be all like sweet and soft, and you could be like, I'm not going to let you go in the other room because it's not safe to hit people and you're feeling really angry right now. And maybe we're just really direct but calm and not judgmental. It's really just about pulling out your fault or you're doing this, and if you don't stop, it's pulling that out of the language. And yes, saying it's okay to have feelings. Because I think that it's such a vicious cycle, right? It's like we're so afraid of the judgments of other people that we're trying to just control the emotions of our kids into this neat little package of like perfect children that, we think we have to present to the world. And then those children, because of the words that we use, those children grow up to think that it's not normal or healthy to have these feelings because they were always told to calm down, or it's no big deal, or why are you acting this way, or you shouldn't be doing this. And then, we grow up and we think, why am I having these feelings? Something must be wrong with me. And then from there develops this, belief that we're unworthy, we're not, worthy of love, and all of these ideas. But it stems from this discomfort within our own thoughts and emotions. Things come up and we panic. And we worry.
Yeah, I know, it's crazy, right? It's all this, like, it all goes back to that. I mean, I feel like and so then parents come to you, they come to me, and they talk, and it's like they're having trouble with their own yelling, their own big feelings, right? This is stuff that comes up when their children are having these big feelings, and there's shame that comes up around that, and then to it's hard in some ways to like sort of communicate that there's no judgment around that, like that. Of course you have these, like, of course this is hard for you to deal with because
exactly,
like of course, and so this is where like that self-compassion work comes in, like, of course you have these feelings, and it's like we almost have to like cultivate this, it's like, right? Like we have to cultivate that voice inside of us that is like our own best friend, instead of this, our angry mom.
Well, it's exactly true. So really, like with my conscious communication cards that I use and that I share on Facebook, we have to take what I'm saying, not, to avoid with children, like demands and judgment and shame. And first we have to apply that to ourselves.
Yes.
So
amen.
Our self-talk cannot be, because I had so many parents that come to me and like guilt-ridden. Yeah. So it's such like racked with guilt, and it's so common. And we need to start accepting ourselves and accepting that this is hard, and that our children, for the most part, are typical, because we all have, like, there's never a parenting challenge I see somebody post online or in one of our groups or in a group, call or something that 50, 100,000 other parents have not already asked about. You can find that question online. Like, nobody's doing this alone. We are all experiencing such similar developmental milestones with our children as they go from being really needy and dependent on us for everything to autonomous, self-directed, thoughtful, compassionate people. But we need to, change that self-talk from the very beginning, because we can have all the words to say to our kids. Like, I can help us translate the punitive into the proactive, right, into the compassionate. But in that moment, if you're not feeling calm and regulated enough, you're not going to be able to access those words that you remember looking at, just yesterday or 2 hours ago. Yeah. You're not going to be able to access that because your brain, the access to the language centers shuts down when we're in fight or flight. We don't need to talk. We just need to, act. So that's why everything is so, that's why when, we yell at kids, sometimes we don't remember what we said, or our kids are yelling, they don't remember what they're saying, because in fight or flight, we're not consciously preparing thoughtful words to, explain ourselves. We're basically just reacting in fear.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you developed these conscious communication cards, which are so amazing. So what are some of the biggest communication barriers, right? What are some of the big things that are so common that maybe that we say that aren't so helpful? Because I think it's sometimes most of the time I think we just don't even know. Like we don't even know that that's going to cause a bad reaction because it's just this is what people say. So what are some of the common ones?
Yes, and this is what I want to speak to this, because we all know that, right? We're not supposed to be yelling, calling names. We don't need to like that kind of extreme stuff. But here, what about the little stuff? Like we have a child who's not paying attention, and we start out and we say, we turn around and look at me when I'm speaking to you. Or it might even be really calm, turn around and look at me when I'm speaking to you. Mm-hmm. And then we should, it's okay. It's a demand, but it's a direct, request. Mm-hmm. But then we might go and say something. Well, look, this is what happens when you don't pay attention, right? We say that we're so well-meaning, our intentions are good, but it's just judgmental and sort of shuts down our kids. Or we want to just control them through advice. We're like, just sit still. If you watch what you're doing, you'll be able to finish. And we just sort of then get into these controlling moments. And then, they're all rigid and stressed out. And then we go, well, look what happens. I need you to listen to me so that you don't make that mistake. Look at me. Do you understand?
So if I'm the child, I'm trying to imagine this, like from the point of view of the child. Like, so if I'm the child, I'm feeling like nothing I do is right. Kind of like, is this kind of the reaction? Yeah, that happens.
I didn't mean that as mom. I'm just trying really, really hard because I know this is taking a long time for everybody. And I'm just trying to get you to just look, just pay attention for 5 minutes and you'll be able to do this. Right? But here's what we can do. Instead of the demands and like that fear, but it's fear, right? So it's not coming from this place of maliciousness. It's just coming from fear.
Fear that our child won't be able to do this, or this kind of place, not of trust, right? We don't trust that they can do it. So advising. And advising is, we talk about that in mindful parenting. Like it's like universally discussed as like one of the communication barriers. But it's so like, I still advise, like, it's so hard.
It's hard not to, right? Because our brains go right to like, let's go step by step. Let me help you, advice, logic. But what we can do instead is just offer an invitation to connect. So that's what we have to do. We have to get our kids' attention by showing them that we want to help them. So just something as simple as, would you be willing to look at me? I have something really important to share with you. Right? Instead of turn around and look at me when I'm speaking to you.
Yeah, instead of ordering, just say it in a, like, sometimes I like the way I like to think about it is like, for some reason, like all the ordering and demanding, like we talk to kids in this way that we just don't talk to anybody else in our lives. Like maybe if it were another era and we had servants or something, right? But like we don't, like if you had a roommate or if you had your sister over or if you had a friend over, you wouldn't say like turn around and look at me when I talk to you. You'd say, hey, look over here for a second. I have something to tell you that's really important. You would say it in just a different way. And so sometimes kind of like my husband and I's shortcut that we've developed to kind of like help us shift our mindset is to like imagine that we're talking to like our roommate,
Yes, exactly. Because it takes out that, well, you're so right in that we wouldn't talk to friends or anybody else like that. But it also, when we think about it that way, we can kind of just take out that feeling that they're out to get us. Because I think that's sometimes like we feel like they're just doing it because they want to be that way. And they're trying to get us because, and sometimes kids are feeling so disconnected that they're shut down and unable to respond to our requests and things because they don't feel like we like them very much. And our frustration, again, can come across as we don't like them. But just like what you were saying, it's like we almost talk to them like we don't trust that they're going to do what we hope that they'll do. So we need to add a little bit of, control or fear or this or that. And so we're not trusting that their development will unfold naturally with us being patient and calm. I mean, Another example, when we say something like, this is what happens when you don't pay attention. That's my really earnest desire to say, look at the details, look over here, look over there. But that doesn't give the child any quality feedback. So I'm all about giving them quality feedback. So if I say something, like instead of judging or shaming what I see or what I think, you're not paying attention, this is what I see, it's happening, can't you see it? Can I just notice what I see without the judgment? So I can even say to the child, I noticed by the way that you were standing that it would be hard to follow those directions. Because maybe the child is staring, looking off into space, and that just by looking at them, the way that it's standing there and looking out the window, that it's probably going to be a little bit hard to follow the directions. So let's look at me for a moment. I have something important to share, right? And then we wait for them. And then, if they don't look at us immediately, we might get frustrated, right? But if we can just slow down in the times that we don't have to rush, then in the times that we do have to rush, it's not going to feel like this is the everyday chronic, tension that's built up to a crazy point. Like it just won't. We'll have moments of conflict, right? It's not to say that conflict disappears, but the everyday interactions don't have to be such a power struggle. When we just saying to a kid, you seem focused on something else. That helps their brain connect and think about, what am I focused on? Or someone's, interested in what I'm focused on. There's the connection piece. Instead of, pay attention, you just have to sit still and telling them, what to do, instead of just recognizing what they are doing. And then let their brains do some work to shift their situation. A lot of times we're telling and demanding, and we're not giving their, that big thinking part of their brain anything to do. Following orders doesn't help the brain develop, right? So they don't actually then get to think on their own and make decisions. They sort of abdicate that responsibility, thinking, well, I'm just going to get told what to do anyway, or they fear making those decisions because they don't want to do it wrong.
Yeah, and then they resist it. I was thinking about this because this morning I feel like I had like a pretty good interaction where my daughter we had to go to swim team practice, and she was like lying on the couch reading, which she's a voracious reader and could read for hours and hours and hours. We've gone through whole things where, listen, it's really important that, you get your stuff done and then you can sit and read when you're all ready to go, right? So she was sitting reading, and so I went over to her, I said, hey, when I see you sitting and reading, I feel worried that, we're going to be rushed later, just letting her know that's how I feel, rather than kind of like this sort of you statement, I guess, is kind of. So does that give the Lori seal of approval, or what would you say in that situation?
I think we always want to be honest with our kids, but here's just one little tiny caveat to that.
Cool.
And that is that we don't want our children to act because we feel worried.
No.
So, well, I mean, if it's to develop a skill like self-discipline and organization, our worry is probably going to make them panic more than it's going to make them thoughtfully aware.
She just seemed annoyed.
Right? Well, annoyance is definitely like the fight or flight is what I mean by panic, right? So annoyance comes out because it's like, reactive, whatever's reactive. But here's the thing, there are some times, when we can tell our kids that we're worried about them. Like when things are actually, they're doing things that are dangerous. That's when I'm really going to worry. But I would say, I'm feeling a little stressed. I'm wondering, I like to prompt with a question. I'm wondering if you have everything together that you need. So then you're still prompting with a question. You're telling her how you feel, or I feel like feeling stressed or worried, or whatever words, worry. It's like, even in that moment, it's a yes or no. Like, I'm not here to be the language police, like I don't want, but I just want us to be really aware of our intention. So that's the big thing.
Yeah.
So am I going in with the intention of making her really aware of how worried I am so that she does something about it? Because then we're walking in with the intention, not with the intention, with this feeling of fear, right? I want to let her know that I'm worried because I'm scared. Or are we walking in to prompt, to give quality feedback, to prompt the development of whatever we want? So we talked a little bit about the cards. The cards are divided into 3 color-coded areas to target root causes, because we can pinpoint any behavior in one of these, one or a combination of, all three of these areas, one or more of these areas. And they are stress, skills, and support.
Mm-hmm.
So stress is when our kids are either overwhelmed by the environment, by, sensory stuff, feeling dysregulated in their bodies. And we know the first aid that we need to go in and help them with is to help them calm their stress response. It's not to go in and give logic, advice, demands, make change. It's really just about soothing the system. Then the second area is skill development. Sometimes kids are just developmentally immature. And so they don't have the skills that we're requiring of them. They can't put on their shoes really fast because right now they're so focused on something and they're little and their brains can't shift that fast. So we need to go in and sort of help them along with this skill or practice. What are we going to use to practice? Are we going to get, timers or visual aids, guides, so that kids know, what's next or where to put things when, it's time to clean up. So we can help kids develop their skills with lots of different tools. And then there's support. Is this a child who's resisting because our relationship has broken down and they don't feel very supported, and we need to come in, or maybe their relationship hasn't broken down, but they need connection. It's that they're feeling lonely, isolated, lost, worried, and they need us to come in with our empathy and our connection. I feel like we always start there anyway, no matter what the direct challenge is, but sometimes kids are actually resisting us because we've been so over-controlling. Mm-hmm. So we need to kind of go in and recognize that the support that we're giving is what matters most. It's about the empathy. It's about connecting with what's really important to their needs. So stress, support, and skills help us identify what we should focus on, because every situation is unique. Sometimes, we do want to share that we're worried with our kids, right? But sometimes we know that this is actually time for them to work on their skills. So it's not about sharing our feelings. It's about giving them a tool to manage their time, or, something like that, But so when we pinpoint these areas, we can then, laser focus in on giving our kids what they need in that moment without feeling like we're always giving punishments or demanding and nothing is ever getting done.
Yeah. So rather than kind of looking at, the idea of punishment or threatening or using fear to kind of solve the problem and get our needs met, it's like looking at our kids and saying, what kind of support do you need to make sure life is going to move, we're going to move through the day smoothly, that kind of thing.
Exactly. I mean, these are long-term life skills that we're building with our kids. Being able to communicate, being able to relate to others, being able to take responsibility for their emotions and their behaviors. Those are skills that are developing and that take a long time, and that if we allow them to make those mistakes in our presence without the fear of being judged or shamed or blamed for their just very natural stage of development, then they go out into the world and they can put forth their best face and their best, and they're proud and they feel capable. Like, I let my kid fall apart at home. There's still boundaries. When she yells and screams at me or says something, then we go back and talk about it. But she's usually at 11, she's usually the first one to come and say, Mom, I was really angry and I didn't mean that, without me having to prompt anything.
Oh, that's beautiful.
But I let her fall apart at home when she needs to, and I don't judge it. And we talk about, well, you got really angry, and here's what we can do instead next time. But I don't ever take the position of, how dare you, again, when I'm regulated. And if I become dysregulated and I become that judgmental parent, I go back in and I repair with her, so that our connection, our relationship is the glue that helps her develop. It's the glue that keeps us, she doesn't even want to lie to me, because she cares about what I think. She's at that stage where sometimes her friends are trying to get away with things, and she just comes and she just tells me. She's like, so my friend wanted me to lie to you about where we're going to go to the park, but she really wants to go over to the baseball field, and I just want to tell you, is that okay? And then she leaves and goes, and she does it in private, because she's like, I don't know why she doesn't want to tell you. And, sometimes it's because kids are afraid of getting lectured, of getting punished or shamed or judged for their ideas. Even the idea, well, why do you want to go to the baseball field? It's silly. Just go to the park. It's across the street. It's like they're just trying to avoid all of that sometimes. And so when we let them be open and expressive, but still set boundaries, then they don't feel the need to resist us so much.
you're talking about the idea of growing our influence, right? And
Yeah.
rather than our power. And
Yeah.
there's like an inverse relationship between influence and power, right? The more we use our power, the
Yep.
less influence we have. Like I
Totally.
could see that in my own childhood. Like then when I was a teenager, there was zero power, right?
Exactly.
And
Because
zero influence.
yeah, I'm smarter now. I don't need you as much. I've got these friends who are telling me everything I want to hear. That's the
Oh,
other
yeah.
thing. And I think that Dr. Gordon Neufeld, I'm going to say, right, is the one that talks about, well, I get a lot of educators do, but really talks about keeping that attachment strong with our kids, because when they get older, they will start to listen to the people outside of their, close circle. And those people will be more influential if we don't keep those bonds strong, if our kids don't know. And again, it's unconscious. Like they don't realize, or we don't realize that we're sending messages of blame and shame and judgment and guilt when we say things like, well, this is what happens when you don't pay attention. Or I told you that was going to happen. Why didn't you just study more? Or why didn't you look both ways? Or why didn't you just ask your friend? Or why didn't you use your words? All these things that we say to try to help are actually tearing away at our our influence.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's when they need it the most. I mean, that was like that's our big hope, for my husband and I, is that we don't have kids who just hate us when they're teenagers and want to like get, because we need that influence then. Like that's a hard time. Like that's an important time for you to have influence with your kids and to be there and to keep that connection going. Well, Lori, this is amazing. Thank you so much for all this work. And I just want to let everyone know that Lori is going to be offering a bonus for the Mindful Parenting course that we'll be doing another live course this September. And she is offering a conscious communication workbook. And she's going to have samples of the communication cards. But you are also doing something else with these communication cards that's really exciting. So if you're listening to this in real time, which means we're in July of 2017, tell us what's going on, Lori.
Oh, we are launching a Kickstarter to publish the first deck of cards. It's going to be a 45-card deck of conscious communication cards, 15 cards of each of those 3 areas that I talked about. So we're launching a Kickstarter to raise the funds, and I would love you guys to check it out. I offer all kinds of rewards to help support us. Everybody walks away with something tangible, but I really want to just help people create better relationships with their kids and feel like they are influential. So I love the support. I'm so glad to have shared all of this. I feel like we had such a lovely conversation about all of this. Yeah. I could do this for like hours with you.
I could too. So where can people go to find out about that Kickstarter? Should they be listening when this is launching?
Well, hopefully you can give them a link.
Yep. We'll put a link
there,
in the...
But
yeah.
You can go to teachthroughlove.com/conscious communication cards.html.
Oh,
that's the long link. I don't know how to give it to you short. You just go to my Facebook page actually and you'll see the announcement. Find me on Facebook. teachthroughlove.com is where you can go to find the general announcement. That's just the website. I'm sure I'll have something on the homepage directing people, or find me on Facebook. We'll have lots of announcements and links and stuff.
Great. And we will put it in the show notes at mindfulmamapodcast.com. Well, Lori, yeah, absolutely. Like I could talk to you about this for hours because it really is transformative. It's life-changing. I mean, I think that one of the things that we didn't touch on that is important to realize is that, this sort of transformation of your communication, it really works. Like you kind of touched on it with your story about your daughter not lying to you, but it really does work. Like we have more cooperation, we have better relationships. Like no, they are not automatons. They are not like always like absolutely 100% obedient like soldiers, but they help us out way more than they ever used to, and we have great cooperation and this kind of shifting to a model of using your influence rather than your power really, really does work. And Lori, your work is amazing for just pointing out, just helping us be much more skillful in our communication.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for people like you. We're leading the change together. We are all joining and saying this is helping us at home. It's creating willing cooperation. So
Yeah, and the ripple effects. Yay
yeah,
for the ripple
yay.
effects. Yay, yay, yay. Cool. So everyone go check out, Lori's Kickstarter. And if you are listening to this a year from now or whenever, go to teachthroughlove.com, all spelled out, or you just Google it. Maybe 3 years from now there won't be Google. Who knows? What you'll do, but you'll figure it out. And
you might just have to think it, and it'll just pop up on your screen.
Oh my God! It'll just download into your brain. Thank you so much, Lori.
Thank you, Hunter.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mindful Mama podcast. I really appreciate it. I hope you liked this conversation with Lori. She's an amazing teacher, isn't she? I really love how she said how kids are not logical. They're emotional. They're reactional. She just helps me. I don't know if she does this for you, but she helps me shift my expectations about, what it is to be a kid and how we should be relating with them. So if you have any questions, you can email me at hunter@hunterclarkefields.com. That's Clark with an E, Fields with an S, hunterclarkefields.com. And if you would subscribe to the podcast and leave a rating, I would appreciate it so much. If you like it, please do subscribe. And remember, you can just click on your phone to leave that rating. Click on the podcast app. You just do the search button, search for Mindful Mama podcast. You'll find it. You click on the little box on the bottom, it's on the podcast, and then you click on reviews and you can leave a review right there. So it really, really helps a lot. Please do that. And if you liked this episode, of course, share with your friends, tell people about it. Coming up next, I think I'm going to put this one in next. I went on a retreat. I went on a mindfulness retreat for families recently, and it was amazing. It was really great. So the next podcast, I'll be telling you all about my mindfulness family retreat that I went on, which is very cool. So if you're interested in the inside scoop on what the heck is that and what happens, and I'll tell you all about it. Okay. Remember to grab the free audio training at mindfulmamaguide.com. And right now we are in a sort of a quieter period in the summer. I am taking some applications for one-on-one coaching clients. That's sort of ongoing. And if you would like to work with me, I would probably like to work with you if you're a listener to this podcast. I love working with all kinds of moms. They come from all walks of life, from teachers to stay-at-home moms to lawyers, and it's just a way to take a shortcut into really becoming that mom you want to be, taking the steps with a coach to guide you. I mean, I work with a coach. I have to say, it just helps you take it to the next level. And, the thing that it seems like crazy, right? But we don't value it enough is our time, right? Like, we only have so much time when our kids are this little, it's so cliche, but they grow so fast. I mean, we don't want to waste our time. And I really feel like that's what coaching is about. It has been like that for me, and we only have so much precious time here. So if you're interested in working with me, go ahead and check it out on my website, hunterclarkefields.com, and you'll see something for work with me. You can always just email me too. I'm happy to hop on the phone and chat. So that's coming up the next episode. I said that. And thank you to William Fields for the music. Check out his amazing work at williamfields.com. And have a lovely week, my friend. I'm sending you lots of wishes if you are in this sort of warm, sticky air that I am in right now for some cool, fresh breezes. But maybe you are on the other side of the globe, and I'm wishing you a nice, cozy fire. I don't know. Have a great week. Namaste. Are you a mom who wants to feel less stressed and enjoy motherhood more? Do you want to be calmer with your kids and be more present for all of your life? I'm a mom who has gone from really being stressed and yelling when my kids were young to having a more grounded, more at ease relationship with life and having more enjoyable cooperative relationships with my kids. And I've shown hundreds and thousands of women around the world how to do this. And I want to show you how to do it too. So if you are currently feeling stuck or stagnant, this is definitely for you. I've created a free downloadable Audible training, Mindfulness for Moms, the superpower you need, and it will show you how to respond rather than react, how to let go of stress and feel more grounded in seconds, how to have a smoother day today and become more present for your kids for a lifetime. To get on this audio training absolutely free, simply visit the website www.mindfulmomguide.com.